Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us at Celebrate Spring to support the Parkinson's Foundation. And even though we can't be together in person in New York City in the basement of Lavo, we're certainly thrilled to have you here with us virtually as we come together to fight Parkinson's disease. We have a very exciting evening planned for you. We'll hear stories from friends about their individual experiences with Parkinson's disease. They're moving, they're inspiring, and they're deeply personal stories. And it really speaks to the reason why we're all here tonight, to make life better for people with Parkinson's and to find a cure. I would like to personally thank each of them, Scott Caputo, Christina Karinis, Chasen Mintz, and George Oliphant, for sharing their experiences with us. I also want to thank Willie Geist for always being so generous with his time and for all that he does for the Parkinson's community. We started Celebrate Spring 14 years ago. After watching my dad fight the PD battle for many years, we knew that we had to raise awareness and funds to find a cure and to help patients and their family members who are fighting the PD battle daily. On behalf of the Parkinson's Foundation, my fellow board members, and all who are challenged by PD, I can't thank you enough for your support and for your generosity. So here's to a great evening. Thank you again for being here. I will turn it over to Willie Geist.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Parkinson's Foundation's annual Celebrate Spring New York event. I am so happy and honored to be here tonight to join my buddy Penn Egbert and the entire Celebrate Spring New York committee to support all of those affected by Parkinson's disease. Although things do look and feel a little different this year, we are thrilled to have you with us for this exciting event. We wish we could gather in person, and we will again soon. But for now, we're just so grateful to all of you who have tuned in tonight. Even under extraordinary circumstances, the Parkinson's Foundation has had a big year working to improve care for everyone with Parkinson's, to advance research toward a cure, and to build on the energy, experience, and passion of our global Parkinson's community. All of the Foundation's important work is made possible by the generosity of supporters like you, particularly on this night. So thank you for taking the time to be here with us. As many of you know, my father, Bill Geist, has been living with Parkinson's for nearly 30 years now. I don't have to tell any of you about the challenges patients like my dad face every minute of every day, or about the grueling, frustrating, often heartbreaking work of a caregiver like my mom, or about the strain Parkinson's puts on an entire family. You all know, you've seen it, you've lived it. But I hope my father can provide some inspiration too about the life a Parkinson's patient can lead. My dad retired just over 2 years ago from CBS News, where he worked as a correspondent on the air for 31 years, most of them with Parkinson's. Even in his discomfort, his fatigue, often his pain, my dad loved traveling the country, meeting people and telling their stories. Even as his Parkinson's became more evident to the audience on television, he kept on. He shared his story with the viewers of CBS Sunday Morning, and they marveled at what he had done for all those years with the disease. As we join together this evening, you will hear personal stories from people whose lives have been affected by Parkinson's and how they are living through it. We hope this evening brings you hope, that it inspires you, and that it gives you a window into life with Parkinson's for patients and for caregivers. Your generosity tonight will help to support the 1 million Americans living with Parkinson's disease and the 60,000 more now being diagnosed each year. So let's start the evening with the president and CEO of the Parkinson's Foundation, John Lehr.
Thank you, Willie, and thanks for continuing to be a great friend to the Parkinson's community and the Parkinson's Foundation. Celebrate Spring is one of my favorite foundation events, and even though we cannot be together in New York, it is still wonderful to be together virtually. I want to thank our many sponsors and guests for tuning in tonight. I also want to thank the Celebrate Spring Committee for their work on this event and for the past 14 years. Penn Egbert, Missy Egbert Sheehan and William Sheehan, Georgina Schaefer, Scott Caputo, Andrew Gustin, George and Peggy Hebard, Josh and Melissa Raskin, Jonathan and Katie Romero, Edward Vitor, Adam and Kim Wolfberg, and Darren and Michelle Wolfberg. We continue to make great progress in our signature programs, PD Generation, Mapping the Future of Parkinson's Disease, is an initiative to provide genetic testing and counseling at no cost for people living with a PD diagnosis. This year, we added an at-home test for people who are socially isolating. As we close in on 1,000 people tested, we are excited by the promise PD Generation offers for a new path of discovery for therapies to treat Parkinson's in the future. In response to COVID, we launched PD Health at Home, which provides weekly virtual programming to all those living with Parkinson's disease. Each week centers on a different topic relating to mindfulness, mental health, and exercise to keep people connected during this challenging time. The Parkinson's Foundation has worked even more closely with our Global Center of Excellence network to make sure we are responding to the unique needs of people with Parkinson's during the pandemic. Finally, over the last year, we have built on our strategic partnerships with AARP and the U.S. Veterans Affairs to ensure that their membership and constituents are aware of the many resources at the Foundation, like our helpline and our life-saving hospitalization kits. Our goal is to reach all those affected by this disease, and with your support, we are making great progress. So thank you again for all of your support. Enjoy the rest of the virtual event.
My father owned every room he was ever in. I mean, he was only around 5'7" stature-wise, but personality, he was a giant. Hi, I'm George Oliphant, the host of George to the Rescue, a show we've been doing for 12 years, helping those in our community who need it the most, fixing up their homes, and just trying to make the world a better place every day. Through George to the Rescue, I am no stranger to different ailments, diseases, things that families are going through and dealing with. But Parkinson's in particular, I didn't learn about through George to the Rescue. I actually had a personal introduction with that through my father, James B.F. Oliphant, but anyone who knew him as Tim. And he was diagnosed with Parkinson's in January of 2013. He just enlightened everybody's life. He was just a tremendous guy. And for me, I mean, I'm his son. He was my best friend. He used to work out every day. He'd call up and he'd talk about how many days he'd worked out consecutively. Oh, I'm on day 165, Jorge. Always called me Jorge. Death-proofing himself is what he would call it. He was way ahead of the curve on eating properly, working out properly, and just taking care of yourself. So, I think that was another reason why when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's, it was extraordinarily hard because he was like, I've done all these things to kind of prepare myself not to get, worse. I read all the time, so my mind is sharp. I eat well, so my body is, running properly. I work out all the time so that I'm strong and agile and able. Why am I, being attacked by this disease? And I think that was something that that made just having Parkinson's for him and for all of us very difficult because he just refused to accept that he had it. He hated asking for help, hated it. He hated looking weak. He hated people, feeling sorry for him. He would try and ditch his walker every chance he had. He was determined to just keep on living his life the way he had and continue to, keep his independence. That was the hardest part, is him losing his independence. It's kind of crazy. It was today, 1 year ago, was the last time that I saw him. And I told my kids, just give him an extra hug today. Give him an extra kiss, let him know that you love him. Because I didn't know that he was going to pass, but I knew that this pandemic was coming, and who knows what the visiting was going to be and what the situation was going to be. And 2 weeks later, he passed. But as the story goes from his nurse, he had dinner on March 30th, and the nurse said she was going to come back after dinner and bring his meds, and he looked at her, and he winked, and he smiled, and she left and came back, and he was gone. My father had this love for hawks, and he would always point them out, and my dad just was always enamored with them, the birds and their patterns and whatnot. He had this artist draw or have this painting done, and it's of a red-tailed hawk. It was like my 40th birthday. It was the red-tailed hawk with Altiero Petro on it, and that's the Oliphant motto, provide for all. And the morning after my father passed, I was going out to my truck, and there was a red-tailed hawk just circling above it. And I am a firm believer that that was my father and that he was there. And recently, I've actually been seeing so many hawks. And I know that they're always there, but it's, I think when they make their presence felt, it's for a reason. And it will, I don't know, comfort me, inspire me, point me in the right direction, or just at least let me know that I'm not alone, that he's still with me. I'm lucky to have a friend, Penn, whose father unfortunately also had Parkinson's. And so he was a great resource for me right out of the gate as to answering questions and knowing that there is a support staff, that there's people to help you figure out what doctors you should see, what exercises they can be doing, what's out there to help people with Parkinson's. What really turned things around for my dad was finding support groups of other people who were dealing with the same thing, but not just the talking about it, but really the participation in Parkinson's boxing, Parkinson's workouts, walks, and it was really the physical things that really helped him the most. Through George the Rescue, I got a story from 3 daughters whose father had Parkinson's. And I remember immediately talking to my producers and saying, this is something I want to do. And I remember calling Penn and saying, hey, there's a guy who's got Parkinson's that I want to do a rescue for, and I would love to get the Parkinson's Foundation involved to help spread the word for his dad, for my dad, for all dads, all moms, all people who are dealing with Parkinson's, so that, you know, they know that they're not alone, that there is resources out there for them. And so, of course, Penn put me in touch with the right people at the Parkinson's Foundation. They came in, they were huge. They helped give advice to our designer on how to best set up the house. They came in and volunteered for painting and furniture assembly and furniture moving. And it was really a great day. And it just also showed me how many different people are affiliated with it. So I remember when I met the daughters and I met the father, and I was like, you know, a lot of times when I knock on people's doors and I tell them I can't imagine what you must be going through, this time I was like, I actually can imagine what you must be going through, and I know how difficult it is. I am grateful to the Parkinson's Foundation for being that source of support and information. Myself and my sister and my family were better educated and prepared because of it. I know this year it's a virtual celebration of spring, but I appreciate everyone who was watching this right now, who's on this journey with us. I miss having my dad there with me. I know he loved it, coming out and having drinks, seeing friends, celebrating spring, celebrating life. We need to continue to do research. We need to continue to try and figure out why this happens, how we can stop it, and how, if we can't stop it, at least, you know, we can maintain it and give people their lives back, because I feel my father was shorted at least a decade and maybe more, and I know that a lot of other people feel the same way, and the only way that we're going to continue to defeat this disease is by working together and putting money and effort forward to, you know, find a cure.
I like to tell everybody that, you know, I'm not dying from Parkinson's, I'm living with Parkinson's. When I was 22, I was driving with my boyfriend at the time, who's now my husband, and we kept hearing like a really weird rattling in his car. We didn't realize that it was my leg that had begun tremoring. And I was only 22 at the time, so I didn't think anything of it, but the tremor got worse, and I started like tripping and losing my footing. And I was like, you know what, let me see a doctor. And I went to a neurologist, and he's like, I think it's MS, but it kind of looks like Parkinson's. and they were able to rule out MS. And then when I went back, he's like, yeah, it looks like Parkinson's, but if you had Parkinson's, you'd be the youngest person and you'd be in the Guinness Book of World Records. And we kind of just didn't even follow through with it after that. When I finally turned 33, after I gave birth to both my daughters, and my symptoms would get so much worse after every childbirth, I was like, I have to continue to see another doctor. And I'd get things like, oh, you just need to calm down, it's anxiety. You should have sex with your husband, you should smoke pot, you should do yoga, you should do things to release your endorphins. And that happened for a solid 11 years. And I'm pretty sure it was 6 neurologists until I finally got my diagnosis. So I finally went to a movement disorder specialist in New York City. The doctor himself came out and he said, hi, my name's Dr. Amdani. Are you Christina? And I said, yeah. And he goes, come with me. So I started walking, but I was walking behind him because I didn't know what room to go into. And he could hear this stomp. And he said, can you walk in front of me? And at that point, I looked at my husband. I remember I was like, this is Parkinson's. And he went through all his, you do these things with your hands to show that you have fine motor skills or the loss of it. And when he was done, he said, Christina, you have young onset Parkinson's disease. It still makes me sad to think about, but it was the start of the rest of my life. And I was thankful to have had an answer. I knew in my heart something was wrong, and I knew it was getting worse, and I knew I could be living a better quality of life. So to hear someone who actually sat down and took me seriously and was like, no, this isn't in your head, I kind of was relieved to not feel crazy. I think everyone with Parkinson's gets affected differently. In my opinion, I think it's different to be young with Parkinson's because the things that you would take for granted as a young person, become annoying. Zippers are annoying. Tying my daughter's shoes is not always easy. Little things that you don't realize. I think another symptom that not a lot of people talk about is the anxiety, the mental symptoms, the stuff that you don't see on the outside. You see my limp, you see my tremor, but it's not that we are just depressed or anxious because we have Parkinson's, but we are depressed or anxious because of the Parkinson's. Unfortunately, I suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, which is the most paralyzing, bring you to your knees, can't move, stuck in a dark place anxiety, one that I would never, ever wish upon my worst enemy because it is the worst crippling pain you would feel. I don't think people realize just how much we suffer inside. And, a lot of us as patients don't even realize it either. But I think for me, I really want to draw attention to that because there's no reason that anybody should either be embarrassed or ignorant to the fact that this is a part of it and it's real. And to me, it's just as important to manage my tremor as it is to manage my anxiety and vice versa. To me, they're one and the same. They're equally as important symptoms. And I think they both need to, be treated as such. Dealing with the anxiety was really difficult because, things get heightened. And as weird as it sounds, I was very thankful for this because last January, I was in the shower and I felt a lump on my breast and I was like, that's weird. And to me, it sent me into a tailspin. So I called my OBGYN and I was like, can I have an appointment? And at first she said, we don't have any appointments, but if you come in and wait, maybe we can squeeze you in at the end of the day. So I was like, okay, I'm coming and I'm waiting. So I waited with my husband till the end of the day and when it was her last appointment and she did the physical breast exam and she's like, it's probably nothing. You're 36, you're healthy. The only thing that you have is the Parkinson's. You can do imaging if you want. And I said, yes. I went for the imaging and I did the mammogram and the ultrasound. And as soon as the radiologist did the ultrasound, she went out and made a phone call. And I'm like, that's not good. She said, I want you to get a biopsy the next day. And that was Wednesday. And on Thursday, I found out that I had breast cancer. So I think if I didn't have the experience that I had with Parkinson's of waiting 11 years, that I wouldn't have listened to my body and I wouldn't have pushed as hard as I did to get that appointment. I had a double mastectomy on February 26th. And then on I believe it was March 18th, the world shut down because of the pandemic. And I remember my husband, we were watching the news and he looked at me, he goes, Chris, your surgery would have been an elective surgery if you waited another day or another 2 days or another week. Your Parkinson's in you, you saved your own life. between my anxiety and the push that I said, I cannot wait any longer with this thing in me. I need to have an answer now. I'm not doing this to myself again. I think I kind of did save my life. My oncologist I freaked out with the breast cancer because I was afraid to not survive for my kids. And she always said to me, she said, Christina, when my sister was 35, her name was Christina, she had breast cancer, and she's 53 now. And she goes, that's gonna be you, you're my Christina. She goes, you're gonna be just like my sister. And I always thought of that when I went through treatment. I remember the last day when I was finally done with chemo, she said, Christina, you did it. She goes, you did it in a pandemic with Parkinson's and a smile on your face. And that always stuck with me. I was a teacher for 10 years, and when I got the diagnosis, I realized that it was probably time for me to stop working because all the regular tasks that you need to accomplish on a daily basis were difficult for me. And I had a student, little Jaden, so sweet, and he knew that I was leaving. And I finally told the class, I said, listen, I'm leaving. I said, nothing's terribly wrong, because they had been hearing things. And I said, I just have Parkinson's and I need to focus on taking care of myself. And I'll never forget, at the end of class, he came up to me and like his little cartoon tears came out and he said, my grandfather has Parkinson's. And when I went home from work that day, I had an email from his parents, and they said that they did some work with the Parkinson's Foundation and they connected me with them. And after that point, I have been in constant contact with them, and they've been such an instrumental part of my journey. The Parkinson's Foundation has helped me find my voice in the community, find family, find a sense of support, and just reminds me all the time that I'm not in this alone. They haven't just helped me; they've accepted my husband, my daughters, as their own. And it sounds so silly, but I just consider them as an extension of my life with Parkinson's. They've become such a huge part of it. I don't often tell this story, but when I received my cancer diagnosis, it was a Thursday, and after my initial family knew what was happening, the first person who was not in my family that I called was the vice president of the Parkinson's Foundation, just because of how good they have been to me and how close I've become with them. They've given me like a gateway to so many opportunities, whether they're helping me or even just them giving me the opportunity to share my information. I always hope that maybe if one person who's going through what I'm going through, if they look at my story and they're like, oh my God, that kind of sounds like what I'm going through, then it just makes it all worth it. I think anybody who's living with Parkinson's, I think it's really scary to hear hey, you have Parkinson's, and you see what you see on TV. And I think it's also really important to recognize that you can live a very normal, happy, it's gonna be different, but it's still a great quality of life. And as much as it's scary, I'd love for people to understand that there is a sense of hope. You're gonna be okay. I find that the more positivity I pour into my diagnosis, the more positivity I reap from life. I also have a big thing because I have 2 little girls who are looking at me every day, and I just can't afford to let them see me beat by this. So I always tell people it's different, but it's still such a great quality of life. And I really think that if you are struggling with Parkinson's symptoms, it's really important to recognize that even though you're having a bad day, it's temporary. There's gonna be a good day in your future again. It's gonna be tough, but if you have the heart and the fight, you're gonna be fine.
I lost my father September 30th, 2017. Following the way he lived, I think is, it's something that I've always tried to, do. So my dad had actually just beaten throat and mouth cancer. It was a serious, long battle that he successfully beat. It was pretty soon after my mom noticed, some symptoms. She called me up and, was worried. He had some slight tremors, very slight tremors, and, his face looked tight, and he was just kind of looking through my mom. I did not notice. My brother did not notice. We thought it was just going to be sort of an after effect in the recovery from beating his serious bout with cancer. And My mom had a special intuition. She realized it, and they went to the doctor, and he was quickly diagnosed with Parkinson's. My father was an incredibly social being, and he had many friends that cared deeply for him. And you know, one of the awful things about the disease is he didn't want people to see him that way, and he didn't want people to see that he was suffering. And you know, he turned inward, and he really just wanted to spend time with his family. My dad was first diagnosed with Parkinson's. I wanted to be able to do something, and I was going for a jog, and I realized, a marathon's something that I always wanted to do, and I could raise money for Parkinson's and run a marathon. And it was an incredible experience. I mean, truthfully, my dad really didn't want people to know about his condition because he didn't want people to fuss over him. And so I didn't, mention that it was my father who had Parkinson's, but I think a lot of people had sort of figured it out. It was a wonderful experience. I got to see my father a couple times during the race, and it was a very powerful day and sort of a special moment in my life. You want to do more. You want to be able to give back in a way that has an effect. And, there's a sense of satisfaction being able to volunteer for this organization, being able to get more people involved, raising money. It has a quantifiable effect. I would say my father was an incredibly optimistic person. Despite how bad he could feel, he still managed to find the time to make my mom and myself and my brother laugh quite a bit. And that was powerful. Even when he was going through cancer and then Parkinson's, he found a way to look at the positive aspects of life. That optimism was pervasive, and it helped. It helped me, but it helped everyone in a room. And I remember him talking about it openly with me when he had the Parkinson's. He was like, "Look, it's terrible, and I'm going to just keep fighting this." And have the right attitude about it. And boy, he really did, right up until the end. I was ready to jump in full steam ahead when I found out that my dad had been diagnosed with Parkinson's. But my dad was not really receptive because he was private. He had a ton of friends, but he was a private person, and he just didn't want people to fuss over him, and so I realized that any involvement, any outspoken involvement, would have to be later. And I remember, speaking at his eulogy that it was time to give back and join the organization. And there's no better organization than Parkinson's Foundation, and there's so much that we can do using the Parkinson's Foundation as a platform. There's a network and a community of people that are going through this and have loved ones that are going through this, and there's help. My message for anyone that's dealing with a loved one or has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, there's so much help. There's so much that you can do. There's emotional and physical support. I think as we continue to fight and raise money for this cause, we're going to have miraculous success stories coming our way soon. And that was something that my father talked about. He believed that there was going to be great strides in this disease. And I'm a firm believer if we can continue to focus our attention and support, we're going to have incredible results.
Thank you for the opportunity to tell you about the Parkinson's Foundation Signature Initiative. This program will not only improve the lives of those living with Parkinson's disease, but also advance research towards a cure. It's called PD Generation. The goal of PD Generation is to offer genetic testing and counseling at no cost for up to 15,000 people with a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. Right now, there are at least half a dozen pharmaceutical companies, more in the wings, that are seeking to recruit individuals with a genetic form of Parkinson's in the hope of stopping this disease. As you can imagine, this is fantastic news. However, we, as a community, are not prepared to take advantage of these new opportunities. Why are we not ready? The reasons are straightforward. Currently, genetic testing is not part of routine care for a person with Parkinson's. It's quite expensive and is seldom covered by insurance. Genetic forms of Parkinson's are rare. Only about 10% of people have a genetic link. The result is most people do not know whether their Parkinson's is genetic or not. And that means neither do their clinicians. So we are at a crossroads. Clinical trials that may halt Parkinson's are coming. In fact, they're here today. But we don't know who's eligible for these trials. Identifying these participants is a little bit like looking for a needle in a haystack. The problem is no one is looking. The result will be slow trial recruitment, and what we fear is that trials will simply fail because it's too difficult to find people to enroll. If this happens, then we face yet another missed opportunity on our path to a world without PD. And this is where the Parkinson's Foundation can help. We excel in addressing unmet needs. With PD Generation, we're looking to test anybody diagnosed with Parkinson's to find those few with a genetic link, those needles in the haystack. The genetic testing and counseling we provide will both accelerate clinical trials and empower people with Parkinson's to learn more about their disease. Most importantly, PD Generation will help speed the development of targeted therapies that may stop PD. To enroll in PD Generation, visit our website, parkinson.org/PD Generation. Learn more about our study, look for an opportunity to sign up. Finally, consider contributing to the foundation so that we can continue to bring this opportunity to as many people with Parkinson's disease as possible. Thank you.
My dad was really the funniest, and he had a really sick sense of humor. So laughter for us kept us going even during the hardest times of the disease. My father was diagnosed around 57 years old. I don't remember a lot because I was still very young. I just remember that my mom said my father was not feeling well and sick, but we were going to work through it as a family. It wasn't until later on in his diagnosis and disease that I really started to understand what Parkinson's disease is, how it affects the human body, mentally, physically, emotionally, and the impact that it has on the loved ones around the person that has the disease. My father had his spine fused in 2013, which was completely unrelated to Parkinson's disease. And from that point on is where my family and I say that it sort of just, the disease kind of took over and my father really took a turn. After the spine fuse surgery, my father was pretty much a vegetable. He was paralyzed, he couldn't eat, he couldn't talk, he started to lose an enormous amount of weight. And the doctors basically said there was nothing that we could do. They put him in ICU and basically gave him X amount of time until he passed away. I reached out to Penn, who connected us with Dr. Fawn. And ironically, Dr. Fawn was the one who actually diagnosed my father. And he gave the doctors and the hospital direction on how to readjust his medication. He schooled them pretty much on Parkinson's disease. He was 120 million% available to myself and my mom, and really helped us get through the hardest time of our lives at that point. He learned how to walk again, talk again, move again. So I always say that Penn and Dr. Fawn and the Parkinson's Foundation saved my father's life, and it is definitely true. I really owe the last 13 years of my father's life to the Parkinson's Foundation, and because of everything that they gave us And again, just the amount of support and information and tools they gave us, we were able to have my father with us for another 13 years. When it came to him taking care of himself, it was always my mom and I pushing him to do activities and exercises and things like that. My dad loves music. He loves to dance. So it was basically dancing in a chair. And I was just trying to get him moving in any way. I had to push him. I would take him walking with me. He used to want to kill me because I'd say, Dad, just a little bit longer, a little bit longer. I knew how good it was for him. And when he did move, it also brightened his soul a little bit because emotionally, Parkinson's takes quite an effect on the heart and the mind and the soul. So I tried to keep him as active as possible with music because that's what he loved. We were in and out of ICU, in and out of rehabs. And the thing that kept my dad going, that kept my dad bouncing back and rebounding, was his love and obsession for his family. My dad and I had a very, very, very special bond. And there were so many times where I did say goodbye to him and I did say, you can let go. And he fought to be with me and he fought to be with my brothers and my mom. And through, I think, love and support and prayer, he pushed through time and time and time again to the point where the doctors and heads of departments at hospitals could not believe that he had made it. And I think that he hung on specifically to watch me go through phases of my life that he knew that I probably would have a very difficult time going through without him. Before my engagement, we thought he was gonna pass and he pulled through, and I never thought he would dance with me at my wedding, and he did. And it was during my pregnancy that I knew that this was coming to the end. And it was time for him really to let go. So through my pregnancy, I knew that as I was creating life, my father was going to eventually pass. And then 6 weeks later, after I delivered, he passed away. And I will be forever grateful for his love and his fight to be with me during the biggest moments of my life. The biggest suggestion I could make, and what I wish my mom and I had done more of, was reach out for help and support, and to really understand that we weren't the only ones going through what we were going through. And the Parkinson's Foundation, through the community, offers that support, offers that unconditional love, and offers that understanding. There are millions of people that are sitting in the seat that you're sitting in, feeling lonely and lost and feeling sad and possibly depressed. But if I can give you my own 2 cents from my father, it would be to stay positive and to stay grateful for every single moment that you have with your loved one. And during the days or the hours where you're not positive, it's okay and it's totally normal. And just be grateful and don't take 1 minute of the time that you have with your loved one for granted.
And that brings us to the end of Celebrate Spring New York 2021. Thanks to your generous donations, the foundation will continue the work of making life better for people living with Parkinson's disease. Thank you for being here this evening. Please stay safe and healthy. Good night.